Hello and welcome to today's web seminar. FMCSA proposes electronic logging device mandate, a look at what's in it. Today's webinar is brought to you by Cline University with expert guest speaker Justin Cunningham, Director of Safety at Cline and a subject matter expert. Before we begin, a little bit about the technology we're using today. All of your lines have been muted for the duration of the web seminar, but you can enter any questions that you have via the question box or chat box. We'll queue them up for the conclusion of the web seminar. You can also click the orange arrow or double arrow to slide the GoToWebinar box closed, but do not click the black X or you will exit the webinar. Without further ado, Justin, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, John, and thank you, everybody, for attending. As you all well know, the FMCSA has put out a publication on electronic devices, so we're going to take a quick moment and look and see what actually is in it for right now. What is an e-log machine? The picture on your screen is the typical what an e-log machine looks like. It's one that's installed in your truck that the drivers use. There's many different brands, types, but this is the typical e-log machine. But there are other items that can be used as an electronic logging device. There are applications out there that you can use on your phone, which means your smartphone can be used as a e-log device, and those same apps can be used on any electronic tablets. Now, these tablets and phones with the applications can be used to help reduce the cost of an e-log machine. So it's not just buying the big devices that that are required daily. So the logging device mandate. On March 12, 2014, the FMCSA announced that they were proposing this rulemaking on the use of electronic devices. And when this rule came out, the ATA, or American Trucking Association, welcomed the proposal, but OIDA stated they were just going to closely study it through the 60-day comment period. Now, that comment period actually started on March 28, 2014. So right now, if anybody in the trucking industry has concerns, questions, remarks about the electronic device mandate, now is the time to get those into the FMCSA. The electronic logging mandate, or ELD mandate as they like to call it, does not have a published announced date of effectiveness yet. These are only targets that the FMCSA is looking at. So what that means is this could change. It could change during the 60-day comment period. It could change before the final rule is published. So please keep that in mind. What we're talking about today could change in the future. But right now, the way it stands, the FMCSA is actually targeting this to go into effect sometime in late 2016. They're proposing the mandate go into effect 2 years after the final rule is issued. So what that means, what they're looking at is the FMCSA is actually targeting somewhere late October or November 2014 for this rule to be published. And 2 years after that is when it will go into effect. The rule also estimates that the cost per truck will be anywhere from $165 to $832 per truck. Now, this ELD mandate consists of 4 parts: the requirement to use it, the protection against driver harassment, the hardware specifications, because things have changed from what you're using now to what they'll be required to use when the ELD mandate becomes effective, and supporting documents that are required to be kept on a driver. So we're going to cover the first one right now, the requirements for use. Who will be required to use these electronic logging devices? All drivers who are required to keep paper records in 8 or more days out of a 30-day period will be required to meet this ELD mandate, which means you have to have the electronic logging devices. This is actually a change from the 2011 rule, which stated 2 or more days out of every 7 days using the logging device. Also, any company that is using what the FMCSA defines as an automatic onboard recording device now will get an additional 2 years after the final rule goes into place, so 4 total years to implement the changes to their ELD machines. That's mainly talking about if anybody's using the applications for your phone or tablets, you will have to make changes to those to make sure they're in compliance with the regulation. Now, dealing with driver harassment. The driver harassment issue was actually the key factor that caused the court to throw the ELD mandate out in 2011. So the FMCSA went back and they focused on two primary areas: the pressures on drivers to exceed their hours of service and inappropriate communication that affected their drivers getting their proper rest. So now the safeguards that they put into place are they've expanded the driver's access to these records. They've given specific wording about how a company harasses with these machines. They implemented a complaint procedure. They increased the amount of penalties for those who harass drivers. They are now giving editing rights to these ELD machines with the drivers, and are giving limitations on location of tracking and mute functionality for devices during the enforcement proceedings. Now the hardware. The new rule requires the machines to be integrated into the truck's engine and the use of GPS information. They have to be tamper resistant and will track the driver's movement, but also can allow for annotations of both drivers and companies to correct certain mistakes. The FMCSA is also working closely with the state's enforcement people, roadside officers, to be able to receive, analyze, and display all data from these ELD machines. That way they can use them just like the companies use them. The ELD rule stipulates that these ELD machines must present a graph grid, either in electronic form or paper form when printed out. And mainly for the phone applications, it is requiring that you use either Bluetooth 2.1, email capability, or USB 2.0. The last part of the ELD mandate that was covered currently is the requirement of supporting documents. Not a whole lot has changed here. You're still required to maintain documentation verifying a driver's hours of service. But you can now be referred to as either paper or electronic. But what they have is they've kind of mandated, given you a template of what to use. For every 24-hour period a driver is on duty, carriers must maintain no more than 10 supporting documents. Now, if you do not have 10, it's okay, but they're saying if you have a plethora of supporting documents, you don't have to keep over 10. Some examples of those supporting documents are bills of lading, any documents that show trip, origin, and destination of the driver and the load, dispatch records, any expense receipts, which can be included as hotel or fuel receipt, or hotel or meal receipts, electronic mobile communication records, payroll records, anything that shows that a driver has been paid. And I have lost my screen.
Mr. Speaker, if you hit that resume, there it is. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks. So that is the ELD mandate as a list of what's required right now. And as I stated earlier, these things can change. The 60-day comment period is in effect right now. It started March 28th. Right now is the best time to get your concerns, anything out there about this, because it will change from what it probably stands right now. The next item we're going to talk about is even though these ELD mandates are coming into play, you are still going to have to abide by the hours of service rules. And in July of last year, they implemented 2 new rules that are still kind of giving some people issues on their roadside inspections. The first one being the 34-hour restart. First and foremost, the 34-hour restart is optional. If a driver can stay within his 60 hours or his 70 hours, they can use the recap method to get their hours or days back. With the 34-hour restart, it is limited to 168 hours, or every 7 days, and must include 2 days between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. Now my next slide has an example of this. If you notice here, the driver ends his 34-hour restart on January 2nd. That's where he got his hours off. So he begins his work on January 3rd. He works from January 3rd to January 7th. He is not eligible for another 34-hour restart until January 8th, Saturday, January 8th. What that means is anything that happens between January 3rd and January 7th cannot be considered a 34-hour restart. If he's off, a layoff, repairs, those all have to be calculated as total time working 0, as in with your recap method. We still have some drivers out there trying to, if they take the 34-hour restart and 2 or 3 days down the road they break down or have a big layover, they think it's okay, since they've been off so many days, to go ahead and start their time over, and that is still not the case. You have to abide by the 168 hours. The next one is the 30-minute break. Drivers must take a 30-minute break after being on duty and or driving, which is roughly lines 3 and 4, up to 8 hours. You cannot pass that 8 hours without taking a 30-minute break. However, companies that use the 100 air mile exemption are exempt from taking the mandatory 30-minute break. Now, when you take this 30-minute break, it can be on either lines 1 or 2. Under no circumstance right now for a normal trucking company hauling property can you take it on line 4. If you are a bulk hazmat hauling a certain amount of bulk hazardous materials, there are certain times you can take it on line 4. But if you're a normal property carrier, you can only take the rest break on lines 1 or lines 2, which is either off duty or sleeper berth. You do not have to keep written instructions in the cab anymore with this break. And the main guideline that the FMCSA puts out there for companies is the driver must be relieved of all duty or responsibilities of the vehicle. What that means to me is if you're going to try to use this during a loading and unloading time, your driver can't be back there helping in any way, shape, or form, or supervising. He has to be relieved and be able to go into the truck lounge, driver's lounge, or in his bunk and get his 30-minute break. A good rule of thumb with the 30-minute break is once you get to about in between your 5th and 6th hour of on-duty working, go ahead and take your 30-minute break. Their studies have shown that if you take your break there, 99% of the time you only have to take 1 break per day. If you take it before that 5th hour, there's a good chance you may have to take more than 1 in a day. Now this next slide, it gives you an example of the 30-minute break. As you can see here on your screen, the driver comes on duty at 10 a.m. He's on duty, line 4, for an hour, goes to driving for 2 hours, comes back in to on duty not driving for 3 hours, and then back to driving for 2 hours. Once you add those up, you get 8. So from that point on at 6 p.m., he cannot go past that mark with either on line 4 or line 3 without taking his 30-minute break. So in this example, he goes up onto line 1, takes his half an hour break, comes back down after that, and finishes his day out. Now, there have been some medical certificate changes that have affected us here recently. The FMCSA implemented that all CDL drivers must self-certify themselves with the state that issues their license. This had to have been done by January 31st, 2014. So this date has passed. The reason I'm still bringing it up to people is some, either by driver's fault or by the state where they're trying to get it done, have not done it properly, and it's still showing some drivers have not self-certified even though they think they have. The FMCSA did extend carrying the medical card for 1 year, but they did not extend the self-certification process. So if your drivers have all self-certified, the only way you're going to know that they are done and the process is complete and in compliance is to run an MVR have an MVR dated February 1st or later to show that they have self-certified themselves. The biggest medical certification change is starting May 21st, 2014. What this is stating is if your driver has a medical card that expires on or after this date, you must hook up to the website that's provided there on your screen and find a certified medical examiner in your area or closest to your area. Now, a lot of people that I've talked to say that, this is easy, this shouldn't be a problem, but in my visits to people, we have found that, once they actually put their stuff into the computer, there may not be as close to what you think. Here's what the website actually looks like. And you notice there at the bottom for drivers and carriers search, you can put in your city, your state, zip code, or all the above, and a radius. I know in my passings with companies, we've sometimes had to go out to a 100 air mile radius to find a half a dozen medical examiners in that location. So it might be a good idea, if you have not gone onto this website, get onto this website, save this website to your favorites on your internet, get onto it, become familiar with it, and locate the medical examiners near you. The last slide I have is just helpful websites to go with, to help you run a safer program. The two I would like to point out on this is the PSP program. It's great to see a driver, potential new hire's background, where he's worked, what type of inspections he's had, and the data queue process. Please remember the CSA process that we have in play right now. Love it, hate it, it is here, and the only way you're going to have correct data underneath you is to challenge any bad data. So please keep if you don't have those websites saved to your favorites, it might be a good idea to add those to your favorites. That ends it for me. The question and answer session is next.
Thank you very much, Justin. We appreciate you sharing all that important information. And for all of you in the crowd, we have a very large crowd today who asked many, many questions. We'll get to as many as we can. And for those of you who would like a copy of the slides or more information from Cline Wood, or for those of you who would like a second opinion on your transportation insurance, we are going to be launching a complimentary poll. It's confidential. We'll be launching that right now, and we'll leave it open for a few minutes as we get started with the questions for Justin. So first question we have is, so if I drive 5 days out of a month that requires a log sheet, am I required to install the e-log machines?
Well, in the example you've given me here, if you only drive 5 days out of a 30-day time frame, you are not required to hook up with the e-log devices. Just remembering, you're going to be questioned on this, and they're going to check just to make sure you do not go over. Because right now, what is required is you have to run on a paper log for 8 or more days out of every 30 days to be required to fall underneath this new. Next question.
Next one we have is, how will these new electronic logging devices be integrated into the trucks?
The way it stands right now with these the ELD machines, they are planning on connecting these machines to the engine of the truck and use any and all GPS information that they can, which mainly means when the truck is in motion, they will be collecting data. And the automatic onboard recording devices that we use right now, with like the applications for phones and tablets, are not tracked that way. So that that's why the change will be using the USB devices or the Bluetooth devices to get them integrated.
Thanks, Justin. The next question we have, how many supporting documents must I maintain for each driver?
A good rule, their rule of thumb is every 24-hour period you don't have to keep any more than 10. Now, I don't know how many companies will have that many supporting documents. The rule of thumb is anything generated from a trip can be used as a supporting document. So, as I talked about in the presentation, bills of lading, fuel receipts, anything generated from a trip now needs to be kept, whereas before you maybe not were keeping everything, maybe just keeping bills of lading. But you don't have to keep any more than 10 in a 24-hour period.
Thank you. And I see that about 2/3 of you have already voted in the poll. We'll leave it open for about another 30 seconds, so anybody else who would like to request the slides or more info, please go ahead and respond now. The next question we have, as long as I am staying under my 70 hours in 8 straight days, do I have to take a 34-hour restart?
No, the 34-hour restart is optional. What that means is when you're calculating your 60 hours in 7 consecutive days or 70 hours in 8 consecutive days, if you're staying underneath your 60 and 70 hours, you can use the recap method that was popular in the past to keep on trucking.
Can I take my 30-minute break while I am being loaded or unloaded?
Yes, you can take your 30-minute break while being loaded or unloaded. You just have to make sure you have to meet that definition by the FMCSA saying you're relieved of responsibilities of the vehicle. You're not watching it being loaded. You're not helping the truck being loaded or unloaded. You're actually getting your rest for that 30 minutes. And another point on that one, I'm seeing a lot of companies getting written up because they're combining their 30-minute break with maybe their stop for fuel, and they go ahead and put fuel and 30-minute break. The officers roadside are considering that you're actually taking the 30-minute break while you're fueling and are not giving you the benefit of the doubt on that. So make sure if your drivers are trying to combine them like a fuel or even lunch, plus it might be a good idea to separate those.
Where can I get a copy of my driving record to check and see if I completed my self-certification correctly?
Well, if you're talking about company-wise, the best way, there are third parties that can, for a fee, can run drivers' MVRs. But if it's a driver, just wanting to see if a driver has self-certified himself correctly, the state that issued your CDL, go to your local DMV and ask them for a copy of your driving record.
Next question we have is the website that you mentioned going to be the only place we can go to check for a DOT certified medical examiner after May 21st?
As of right now, yes, the website is the only location you will be able to find a DOT certified medical examiner to do your DOT medicals for your drivers. There has been discussion and talks about printing a manual or a log, but the problem with that right now is they will be allowing physicians to add and subtract at any time they want, so the most current up-to-date will be that the web-based system.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Justin. We appreciate you speaking today, and we'd like to thank Clinewood University for sponsoring today's web seminar. We'd also like to thank everyone in today's audience for taking time out of their day to join us. With that, today's web seminar is now ending. Please be looking for future Clinewood University web seminars. We hope you have a great day.